1. So this happened when I was living in an apartment in New York City with my grandparents and parents. I was watching television in the living room with my grandpa, and I looked out onto the balcony to see the tree that was right beside our balcony shuffling wildly. I poked my grandpa and told him to go see what it was. He tried to reassure me that it was just a squirrel or a bird, but I was smart enough to know that the tree was shaking too wildly to be a bird or a squirrel. He finally got up to check, and he was out there for about 5 minutes before an onion fell on him. Goddamn onion! At this point, I was freaked right out. My grandpa came in after that and tried to say it was just a really big squirrel shaking the tree for acorns. But I told him then that I saw an onion fall on him. He chuckled and asked if I wanted to go somewhere. I forget, maybe McDonald's. So I agreed and we left. Though it was about 7 p.m. when we left McDonald's. And since this was in November, December, I again forget, it was getting real dark. My grandpa decided to go a long drive, road trip thing, around New York. But we had to go home first to get our RV, some food, and some blankets and pillows. So we set off to go on an all-night road trip, which I tried to stay up all night on. We got to about 10:50 p.m. and we arrived in Albany. We decided to quickly grab a pizza from Albany Pizza and eat it in our RV. Then we hear a knock. Me being paranoid back then, and still paranoid now, I hit on the bottom bunk bed under the covers. The banging gets louder, and I can tell my grandpa's not going to open it. All of a sudden I hear, "Open the fucking door!" I cried silently as I peeked out of the blankets to see my grandpa peeking out of the blinds. He runs back to the steering wheel and starts it again, driving off. I get out of the bed and look out the back window. I see 3 people, all dressed in dark green, dark blue. They don't have masks on, but they had baseball caps on which blocked their eyes. They started following us, of course. I walked to the steering wheel and my grandpa told me to call the police, so I did. And I got the plate number. I believe it was something like AM7 yada yada yada. After that I fell asleep. But I woke up around 4 a.m. in the RV with my grandpa and police surrounding me. They asked for a description of the guys and what car they had. I told them the description, but I didn't know the car. I believe now that it was a Hyundai Ascent. It had 2 doors and it was gold. So I told them about the 2-door thing and that it was gold, and they thanked me. We went home after that, and since it was around 6 a.m., my parents were home wondering where we were. My grandpa told them everything, and after that, they were very protective of me. So this is now January of 2009, the year after the RV incident. I'm at school playing with some kids. It's during lunchtime, and we're playing tag or hide and seek or something like that. In fact, it was probably manhunt, which is like hide and seek and tag combined. You hide, and the it tries to find you. And when they do, they try to tag you. So I was behind a tree with my friend Talia, and I see 2 guys and 1 girl walking along the sidewalk behind us. They all smiled at us, but like in a creepy way. The girl then said something along the lines of, "Can we play with you?" Like straight up asked to play with us. I tugged Talia away, and the people then tried jumping the fence. We told the teacher, and there was a lockdown, and me and Talia were sent home. In June, way after those incidents, school was out and I was playing in Central Park with my other friend Jeffrey. We were there with both of our parents, playing fetch with my dog Mimi. A girl comes up to us and asks if she wanted our dog to play with her dog. She looked exactly the same as the weird girl who came up to us with the 2 other guys. I declined nicely, and she gets the weirdest, meanest face ever. She mutters something like, "Fine, whatever," and walks away. That night me and Jeffrey had a sleepover at my house. and I told my parents about that girl and how she looked similar to the schoolgirl. She didn't call the cops, but she did talk to my dad about it. So the next day, we go out to rent some boats at Central Park. Me and Jeffrey got our own and rode around just talking. Until another boat starts following us. There's 2 people inside it. A girl, same girl, and a guy. They get close enough to bump into our boat. Then they row away. I recognized them from school, and I told my mom. After that was the end. Nothing else happened. No one was arrested. No one was kidnapped or murdered. So, sleepy car, school, dog, boat threesome. Let's not meet again. 2. It was probably around 10 p.m. one summer night, when I was hanging out with 2 of my neighbor friends, Rick and Jeffrey. Both are very aloof and in their own respective universes, but while Rick has a very peaceful nature, Jerry is sort of crazy, and says some pretty fucked up shit. Sometimes. We're all skinny white boys, just some background info. Anyways, they both had gone to colleges out of town when I went to a university in town. This becomes important in a moment. So it was nice for us all to be hanging out and catching up at Jeffrey's house across the street. After a little while, Jeffrey informed us that one of his friends, Raj, was coming to spend the weekend with him from their college. Raj has never been to our city before, which is a pretty major city, so Jeffrey felt like we just had to give him the best, most memorable experience ever. Rick was just along for the ride as usual, and at that time, and was always looking for trouble, so we all agreed to give Raj a fun visit. So at around 10 or 11 p.m. at night, we began plotting for his friend's arrival before leaving to pick him up from the Greyhound bus station. Yeah, blunts. Or 20% tobacco ones, of course. Were rolled, and we ended up deciding to take him downtown to give him a glimpse of the city and the nightlife. We were all natives, but since I spent the most time in town at college, I was delegated to be the city navigator. So we end up rolling out of Jeffrey's driveway in his mom's car. I'm shit with cars, but it was a large 4-door SUV type of car. The type that has 2-3 rows of seats and a big trunk. His mom was a feisty Latina woman and was notorious for taking turns at 1,000 miles an hour and even killing neighbor dogs due to her reckless driving. Anyways, it's a big MF car. We're driving and joking, happily getting closer to the bus station and further into one of the shadier sides of town. And I mean this in 2 ways. It was both parts ghetto and dark. Like it was really, really dark tonight. It must have been a new moon as well as cloudy or something. It was spooky. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Greyhound buses, they're a cheap way for people to travel between cities, and they don't have the best reputation. So needless to say, the crowd at the Greyhound bus station at around midnight was sketchy as fuck. So there we see Raj, a skinny Indian kid with his backpack and suitcase, standing nervously a good distance apart from several individuals who were apparently performing a drug transaction of some sort. That should have been our warning to just go home, but of course when Raj hopped in the car, we all announced our grand plan to go downtown. Raj is excited too, so Jeffrey starts heading downtown. I direct us to a nice park with a view of the skyline, just across the water from downtown. Although we are literally right off a major street, the park and the parking lot are off to the side and had hardly any light illuminating the area. Also, we're right next to the bridge, which has a pedestrian walkway. It is really dark, but all is well. We are all acquainted with each other and feeling great. We decide to sit at some benches towards the far end of the parking lot, away from the entrance, and spark up a blunt. I think I was the first to notice it pulling into the parking lot. It would be offensive to call this shitmobile a car. Even though it was dark, I could see the peeling paint, duct-taped windows, and mismatched tires. And it was moving slowly, like creeping along but kind of all over the place, going in no particular path. And the strangest thing of all was that the front passenger door was open while the car was still moving. I pointed it out to my friends and we were all watching the car move, and then, bam, somebody falls out of the open door and lands on the asphalt. I can see that it is a young woman that was well dressed, and as if she had came from a college party. She gets up in a flash and takes off running barefoot while holding a pair of heels. From what I could tell, she ran straight into the lake and probably started swimming for the other side. It's swimmable. So we're all thinking, holy fuck. Meanwhile, the shitmobile has parked next to the only other car in the entire parking lot. Ours. A tall, muscular black man gets out of the shitmobile. He is wearing a wife-beater, chain, and baggy jeans. He begins looking in every single one of Jeffrey's car windows while we sit on our bench about 40 yards away, smoking our blunt, and looking in complete horror at what was happening. I keep my cool. I turn to Jeffrey, Rick, and Raj and tell them that we should take a walk. The farthest path from the shipmobile and its driver was a staircase that led up onto the pedestrian bridge, which then either let you walk all the way across the lake to downtown or back into the parking lot that we originally parked in. We walk up the steps and about 20 yards towards downtown and finish smoking while high up on the bridge. We nervously chattered about what we saw. Yeah, boys, that was some crazy shit. We kill the blunt and decide to go home, walking back to the car by doubling back and walking past the steps and down the rest of the pedestrian bridge into the parking lot. We're walking down the pedestrian bridge. We all had a pleasant buzz, and the rest of the guys were about 10 steps ahead of me, excitedly talking about who the fuck knows. I remember having a stupid little smile on my face when I sort of instinctively looked over my shoulder and saw it. The motherfucker was right behind us, probably 20 or 30 yards back. And he wasn't just walking, he was stalking us, as if we were his prey. His legs were bent, and he was taking quick, silent steps. His shoulders were arched, and his hands seemed at the ready to do something bad. He is closing ground, and quickly. Nobody else is aware of his presence. I try to play it cool again. I psst the guys, in an effort to get their attention. Jeffrey turns around with a big smile on his face that is wiped clean when he sees. Jeffrey's eyes go wide before he turns around and takes off running. The flight in fight or flight completely took over. We ran as fast as we fucking could down the pedestrian bridge. We still had 50 yards or so of parking lot to cross before we got to the car. I started panicking in my head. Is he behind me? What if he catches me? What if the car isn't unlocked? Luckily, Jeffrey didn't freeze and got the car manually unlocked in time. We all frantically piled into the car when we saw that, yes, he was indeed chasing after us. He reached the front of the car by the time we barely got inside, and Jeffrey started the engine. He approaches the hood of the car. He pulls up his wife-beater to reveal a gun and what looked like a fake sheriff badge in his waistband. "Step on the gas, Jeffrey. I don't care if you fucking kill him. Just go," I scream. He listens to me. The tires give a piercing squeal against the ground as the car lurches forward as fast as it can. Our predator sidestepped out of the way at what had to have been literally the last second, and then punched the window really, really hard while we bolted past him. I glanced behind me through the rear window and saw him looking really fucking pissed and frustrated that we got away. That freaked me out almost more than the rest. His disappointment that we escaped. I instruct Jeffrey to drive as fast as safely possible through the streets of back roads and detours that I knew about, just in case the shitmobile decided to follow us. I wasn't worried about getting pulled over. We were all scared shitless. I end up navigating us out of downtown and back to Jeffrey's house. Once we got out of the car, we had a giant group hug where we acknowledged what had happened and celebrated that we made it back safely. Another neighbor friend walked up on that, and had no idea what to think of 4 guys having a group hug in the driveway at like 1 a.m. Needless to say, I don't think Raj enjoyed his visit very much, as he ended up isolating himself in Jeffrey's own home and left early. 3. This happened while I was in 11th grade. I'm a female and tend to be a people pleaser. I never like to call anyone out, reject anyone outright, or act like someone is weird. I'm also a bit open-minded and tend to go with the flow. School had started in early September, and in my marine biology class, I noticed this boy kept staring at me from the corner of my eye. I just made one of those half smiles towards him to acknowledge him, and went about my assignment. I really did not think much of it for a couple of weeks, even though he continued to stare. He was very skinny and tall, had brown hair, eyes that were so brown they could have been black, and a generally nondescript face other than his super dark eyes. One day, he decided to say hi. I said hello back to him. He told me his name, which was Alex. I told him mine, but he said that he already knew my name. That's not a surprise, as I have rather large handwriting, and he could easily have watched me write my name on my papers, since he was staring at me so much. It was just kind of odd that he didn't really have any facial expression when he flatly said he knew my name. I just laughed a little, said, "Oh, okay," and began putting my things back in my bag as the bell was about to ring. I only had a few friends, and we always sat at the same table during lunch. We were rather quiet, and most times read while we ate. That means I don't usually look around the lunchroom, as I have my eyes in my book. This day, my friend finished her novel, so I decided to put mine away, and we could just talk. I immediately noticed Alex staring inside at us from the courtyard tables. He never seemed to be embarrassed that I noticed him. I showed him to my friend and told her about my class with him. She found it to be super creepy, but I said he's probably harmless and just socially awkward. I arrived in marine biology a little early later that day. And so it was just myself, Alex, and one other girl for about 10 minutes. I half smiled at Alex, and then I decided to break out my book and start reading again. He had his hands up, folded over his mouth, and was staring again. At this time, it just felt awkward because we were basically alone now. I glanced over at him and kind of raised my eyebrows a little as if to say, "Yes?" He looked me up and down very slowly, and I just asked him if he was okay. He said yes. That he was just inside of his head thinking, "Okay, whatever, that's fine." The next day at lunch, there was a little piece of paper on the table that we sit at that had my name on the front, but not just my first name, my first and middle name. I opened it, and it says something like, "I wonder what your asshole would look like with a thick PVC pipe shoved up it." What the fuck? I looked around, but I didn't see Alex. I immediately knew it was him. I was very scared to come to class later that day, but he wasn't there. I felt a lot better about not seeing him. The note itself was gross and embarrassing. I didn't want to show any administrators because of that. I just threw it out. I went to the bus area at the end of the day like usual, but this time, I noticed Alex was leaning on one of the pillars with his backpack on one shoulder. I literally felt chills down my spine when I noticed a white PVC pipe poking out of the top of his backpack through the zippers. I didn't give him any reaction to my knowledge, even though I'm sure he was watching me read the note. The next morning, I made an appointment with a counselor and had my class changed. She was very reluctant to do that for me because we were already in the school year well over a month and a half. But I think since I have a history of good grades and behavior, she helped me out. I spent the rest of the year avidly avoiding him. He kept staring at lunchtime, and one time, he took photos of me at the bus area without my consent, even though it was against school policy. I got some pepper spray for when I get off at my bus stop. I have no clue what happened to him because when 12th grade began, he was no longer at our school. I'm not sure if I even want to know how he turned out. So, creepy kid with a pipe fetish, let's not meet again. Ever. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 92. Getting real close to that 100 now. I can almost feel it. It was one of those days I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to record. It was kind of a warm day here, so there's folks out doing their lawns, making noise, having barbecues, generally just having fun, which is fair enough, but gosh darn it, some of us have YouTube channels to run. Then there was the matter of the pesky bee, or something that buzzed and flew. Figured I'd better catch that little bugger before I start recording, because I just knew if I didn't, and I waited till later, or waited till it went out the window, which I'd opened for it, it would come in the room while I was recording, and it would be picked up on the mic. Ah well, all sorted now. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.